All right, so welcome to Reward Yourself. This course is all about rewarding yourself. When I named it Reward Yourself, my tech guru and my marketing advisor, Steve Foster, said, "What the heck kind of a title is that?" You know, the first course I taught this year was called Fix It, like fix your financial future, and Reward Yourself. This course is kind of a follow-on to that. And the idea is that you should try and find ways, to secure your financial future and to do things in a different sort of way. I mean, I think Apple's tagline is think different, or at least it used to be think different, but that has been kind of my way of approaching things for a very long time. So anyway, I'm going to start sharing my screen. I think you guys know that I can't really say much without a slide deck. And here it is. Okay, and I think Denise, you told me to move the people over away from the main screen, so I'm going to do that. So I'll be looking this way or this way. I don't know. You guys will just have to follow along as best you can. So it's Reward Yourself: how to really find, buy, finance, renovate, refinance, multi-residential, mixed use, which means there's often some commercial in it, buildings with out of sight cap rates. And it's pitched at a third and fourth year university level course. That's kind of what I teach. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's been holding me back as a presenter, because the stuff that I'm going to teach you, a lot of people will ask me, I don't coach these folks, but they'll ask me, "Bruce, just tell me what to do." I guess I should be talking to this camera. "Tell me what to do." and I say, to them, that's not the way I see my role. My role is to give you the tools to make good decisions, and long after you've done some coaching with me or studied with me, you're making good decisions on your own. And that's what I'm doing. So that kind of holds me back. Instead of having an audience of maybe 100 people or 300 people, I typically have audiences of 30 or 35. I think there's 30 people enrolled in this course. So this is lecture one. Next Saturday, we do another one, and then there's another one after that. Okay, and most of you, maybe all of you know me, but I've been an entrepreneur for a long time now. I'm 70 years of age, so close to 40 years. In fact, I started at 28, so more than 40 years. I'm a real estate broker. I've been a developer, real estate developer. I've been a coach, a real estate investment and business coach, an urban guru, a keynote speaker. Maybe I can't do anything else, but I can talk. I'm the founder of the Ottawa Senators Hockey Club. I like writing, so I've written a number of books. I think I'm a good husband and dad. So this is me. In terms of my development activities, I've built over 1,200 homes, lots of office buildings and shopping plazas, industrial condos, which I really like. That's like apartment condos, but they're for industrial use. Travel apartments. It was Airbnb before there was Airbnb. Residential and industrial subdivisions. I published a newspaper. I put together an NHL team and had a hand in building the Canadian Tire Center, a 20,000 seat arena. I've been a university professor at a number of places, and have written now over 85 books and handbooks. And I put more than 2,500 people through the coaching practice in the 9 years that I've been doing it. And my tagline is making impossible possible. That's kind of what I do. And what I'm going to be talking about for the next 3 weeks, 3 Saturdays, is alpha investing. And not everybody knows what the term means in a financial sense, alpha investing. So the definition from Investopedia is alpha is a term used in investing to describe an investment strategy's ability to beat the market. So what I'm trying to tell you is, I believe, in terms of my tagline, which you can see on the left-hand side, that I've cracked the code and I know how to beat the market in real estate. Now, if you ask me about stock market investing, I'm a disaster. Mutual funds, even worse. So I don't know anything about that, and I don't invest in the stock market, and I don't invest in mutual funds. I don't have any RRSPs. I think I have $3,500 in RRSPs. It's just that's my bias. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean it's yours. But here's something I don't agree with in their definition: that there is no way to systematically earn returns that exceed the broad market as a whole. I think that's actually wrong. But I mean, hate to say it because Investopedia is well respected, but I think that is wrong. And I'm going to try and prove that over the next 3 weekends. So I put Pinocchio on here because I think Investopedia, I don't think they're lying, but I don't think they're right. And then I love this ad. I've used it before. Some of you have seen me use it before. This was from Ally Bank. Call me needy, but I prefer an interest rate that's in your best interest. And they're offering a generous 0.99%. Now, if any of you think that a return of 0.99% a year, which means on $1 million, you get 10,000 bucks. If you think investing $1 million to get $10,000 a year is okay, you can tune out right now. You don't need any help from me because Ally Bank is your best bet. But I don't think that's the way to go. On the left-hand side is the most eligible bachelor in the United Kingdom. He is the 7th Duke of Westminster. He's about 30 years of age today. And his family has been doing what I'm going to be talking about over the next 3 weekends since 1740. So they've been at it a little bit longer than I've been alive. And they have a portfolio that was valued just under 10 billion pounds. Some years ago now, it's probably worth double or triple that now. And when that valuation was done a few years ago, Hugh Grosvenor, who you see on the screen here, was managing to scrape by at 15,000 US dollars an hour. That's 24/7, right? And that was from his rental portfolio. So, so Jordan, do you think you could scrape by on $15,000 an hour, 24/7, 365? Yeah, you could manage that. All right. So I think I might be able to squeak by on it as well. And they have properties in 4 locations: Sydney, Australia, Los Angeles, Mayfair, which is in the center of London, and Vancouver. They may have a few other properties, but those are the main markets. And what I tell people is, whether it's you or me, or just about anybody else I coach, is you probably are going to have properties in at most 2 markets. So for me, it would be, say, Ottawa and Belleville. Those are the 2 markets that I'm really invested in with my wife, Dawn. 2 markets you could probably handle until you get to this a much larger scale. So if you're a billionaire or multi-billionaire like this family, then you can probably handle 4 markets. But I have some clients who come to me and they have small portfolios, and they're in 6 cities, 8 cities across North America, in the States, and in Canada. That's too many, and it's too hard to manage. So tight geography is better in most cases. And then I put right at the bottom, this is based on some research I did a few years ago, that 61%, almost 2/3 of the 100 wealthiest Canadians have all or substantially all of their wealth invested in real estate. That's incredible. And I'll bet you that's true in Mexico. I'll bet you that's true in Russia. I'll bet you that's true in the United States, and in Australia, and in many, many other countries. I'll bet you it's close to that almost everywhere. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if it's higher in places like Argentina and other countries. So if people have been doing that for a long time, in this case, centuries, in terms of the Grosvenor family, it's probably okay for you as well. Now, I just added this slide literally 15 minutes ago because I wanted to talk about a question that I get asked all the time. Is this a good time to invest in real estate? Should I wait for the next real estate crash? And if you had waited for the next real estate crash, you would have waited a very long time. The last real estate crash was around 2008, 2009, which was a fantastic time to buy. There's no question about that. But there's been an unprecedented, at least in my experience, unprecedented increase in real estate values for a very long time. So I do think that even though prices for real estate are extraordinarily high in many markets, I do think that there's still lots of opportunity. That's my opinion. Now, the opportunity has a qualification to it, and that is that it makes cash flow. So I have a couple of clients in Long Beach, California, young guys, neat guys. They're typical California, the jargon and the cool, they're too cool for their shirts. They're really cool guys. But they were buying properties in Long Beach with 1.9% cap rates. So better than Ally Bank at 0.99%, but not a whole lot better than you could get just on a T-bill, a treasury bill. So I said, you got to stop doing that. And they said, oh, it's impossible. This is California. This is Los Angeles, 1.7, 1.9% cap rates are it. And I said, well, I'm not going to coach you. So they fired me before they hired me. All right, so they didn't hire me. But about 4 months later, they came back and they said, okay, yeah, we understand that losing money is not really that much fun. Because when you have a portfolio that performs at 1.9%, it means you're reaching into your jeans every month to subsidize your real estate portfolio, and that gets old. It's like owning a National Hockey League team and losing $40 billion US a year. Might be fun for the first year or two, but it gets old, right? And eventually you want to sell that team, right? The second happiest business day of your life is the day. Don is saying that the audio is choppy. Is that the case? Tim, do you want to unmute yourself for a second?
Mine seems to be fine.
So Don, if necessary, could you re-log in? Could you handle that? Could you manage that? Maybe log out and log back in, and that'll improve your connection. But you're hearing me okay, Tim? Just give me the thumbs up. Okay, Greg, you can hear me? Okay. So if it becomes choppy, let me know. I can talk real fast because we have a lot to go through. So if it's choppy, you won't get anything. So I apologize to you, Don. So now I've forgotten where I was. Anyway, so is this a good time to invest in real estate? I think yes. I remember where I was now. I was talking about the Long Beach situation. So what they stopped doing was they stopped buying horrible cap rate properties that were cash flow negative, and they are looking for opportunities. Now, in their case, it wasn't multi-res, it wasn't 3-story buildings or 5-story buildings, it wasn't 100-unit apartment buildings. What they've been doing, because they're in Long Beach, is they've been buying properties close to the port. Long Beach has one of the most important ports in the United States, and what they've been doing is they've been buying, they bought actually 2 high ranch bungalows that are adjacent to each other. And the lots are very deep. They're about 5 blocks from the port, and they got permission from the city of Long Beach to add 2 workshops in the backyard, big ones, 1,600 square feet. So they were able to put 2 workshops there. So they had the high ranch bungalow in front, 2 of them, and then 2 big workshops in the back, which also, because there was an alley there, were accessible separately from the main house. Now you have this live-work condition, right, which is a big thing today, huge, right, big thing. And one of them is around a 5.5% cap rate, and the other gets to 6%, which is the minimum that I've set for myself and the people I coach. So that is a big change. And the workshop is an asset. The apartment is a liability in the sense that you have to pay the rent to stay in the apartment, but presumably the workshop is a way to make some money. And the fact that it's 5 blocks from the port means that people who have rented these properties are servicing the port 5 blocks away. And those ports work 24/7, 364. I don't think they operate Christmas Day. All right, so what is pushing up real estate values? Okay, what is pushing up the real estate values? Right now, there's a number of factors that are hugely influential. General inflation obviously is running at around 7 or 8% in Canada, highest in 40 years. We have labor and material shortages, labor and material price increases as a result of those shortages. We have stupendously stupid zoning restrictions, which are crimping the supply of housing, crimping also the supply of land. So you've got land shortage and housing shortage. War has started in Europe. And this is going to have a fantastic implication in the sense that for Canada, I think, and certainly for places elsewhere like Poland, there's going to be enormous immigration. My wife and I are actually talking about adopting a child who has been orphaned in this war, and we're going to apply to see if we can bring at least one of them here to Canada to live with us and see if we can contribute in a small way. So there will be increased immigration, I have no doubt about that. And you see also on this list, growth of Zoom towns. I think some of you now understand the term Zoom town. A Zoom town is a town like Belleville where Jordan and Mark are, which is within an hour or 2 of a larger center like Toronto that is exploding in growth because so many people are getting permission to work from home, and they can leave Toronto and live in a great town like Belleville, pay Belleville prices for a house, but earn Toronto salaries. So you're going to see, again, a big change. And then I talked about work from home, mixed use, and the live-work condition. That is off the charts. There's also a GIGPRENEUR revolution going on. So every single project that you do, I want you to be thinking about what does the GIGPRENEUR, the entrepreneur, really want? And he or she often wants work from home and a live-work condition. In Canada, the United States, they are saying that there are millions and millions of people who've left the workforce. But I don't agree with that stat. I think it's wrong. I think those people haven't left the workforce. What they've done is they've started a side hustle, which has become a business for them. And because there's a tremendous lack of affordability, I believe for us as real estate investors, it's going to push up the number of long-term renters, good quality long-term renters, people who want cost certainty. And a lot of people don't want to own property. A lot of young people don't. They say, look, if the furnace breaks down, Mr. Landlord or Ms. Landlord, it's your responsibility to fix it. If the roof leaks, you fix it. They want cost certainty, and that does come to some extent from renting. So that's stuff that I think will continue to push real estate up. What could influence real estate values down? Higher interest rates. Generally speaking, as interest rates go up, demand does tend to taper off to some extent for new housing. And stricter rent controls in various cities and towns across Canada and the United States might also do the same. But that's a possibility. Sometimes rent control tends to backfire and actually helps landlords, but I'm not going to go into detail on that. So that's a different thing. So anyway, I think I have cracked the code on how to get minimum cap rates of 6%. I believe I can do that in a lot of cases. And with animation, sometimes we can push it up to 8, 9, or 11%. And I'm going to show you somewhere the cap rates are ridiculous. They get to 14 and 20%. It's stupid, but it's true. You guys know that a cap rate only measures the cash return. Right? Doesn't measure price appreciation and mortgage paid down by your tenants, right? So the true real estate professional is able to calculate internal rates of return. And that's a little bit more complicated than cap rates. But if you are an analyst or you're determined to be a true professional in this business, you're going to have to master how to calculate internal rates of return. And the Excel spreadsheets will do that for you. So typically, most of the projects I've worked on for myself and for my clients have internal rates of return between 18 and 24%. They're generally higher than cap rates. So you could have a project with a 6% cap rate that has an 18, 20, 22, or 24% internal rate of return. Why is that? Because the cap rate only measures cash flow. The internal rate of return adds in appreciation because you hope real estate goes up in value, and it also takes into account that the mortgage is being paid down by your tenants. All right. So there you go. So some of you have seen this case study again, but I'm going to take it a couple of steps further. And Mark and Jordan, I'm coming back to you. So everybody knows about today's lecture. The first part is just me talking. The second part, we're very fortunate to have Mark Turner and Jordan Turner on the call with us. Mark, just wave hi again. There's Mark. He has almost single-handedly renovated downtown Belleville. 14 mixed-use buildings have been brought back to life by Mr. Turner and his crew. Including a couple that I'm working on, in fact, 3 that I'm working on, and he's got 6 more, I think, in progress now. So we're really lucky to. So we're coming back to you, Mark. You're not just going to sit there for 2 hours. You're going to do some work, okay? All right. But so you've seen this one before. This is a very good example because it's very inexpensive, and it shows a lot of the kind of principles that I'm trying to convey to you. And so whether it's this building, which is really quite small, and the amounts of money involved are small, or much bigger, the principles are the same. So you've heard me talk about this model. It's called Main Street Makeovers. You go into a Zoom town, a small town that has an historic Main Street that has been overlooked, right? And Belleville certainly was an example of that. And it has beautiful buildings, 100, 150 years of age that have been horribly beat up by terrible owners. And you could buy them, at least when I started, very inexpensively, and you make them over. It's like going to get a makeover, a facial, a manicure, or whatever else. So, and I teach something called the BARF method as opposed to the BRR method. And really the only difference between BARF and BRR, excuse my language, but the A stands for animation, adding new revenue streams. So what is the process? You find something like this. And here's some breaking news for you guys. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute, just to change up things so you don't get too tired. The breaking news is this. One of the key things is, how do you find these buildings? Okay, most people say, well, I'm going to call a realtor and he's going to or she's going to find me these fabulous buildings to build. That is not going to work, period. Okay, realtors are busy. People call them up and say, hey, Bruce, I found this building over here. I'm a realtor too, as well as a coach. Can you put in an offer for me? I found this piece of land. I want to buy it. You know, so realtors are busy. And if they found something that was extraordinarily good, maybe they wouldn't call you. Maybe they would buy it themselves. So breaking news, you have to learn what to look for, where to look for, and then you have to put in the effort. I'm going to repeat that. You have to do the work. And in my case, I don't do any of the work because I have a spouse who lives on MLS and LoopNet and Kijiji, and who has trained herself through pattern recognition to find hidden gems. She could go into the most overdeveloped, most highest end subdivision, downtown, whatever, and she'll find something that everybody else has overlooked. I don't know how she does it, but she does it incredibly fast. That's my secret, okay? And you can't use Dawn. That's off limits. But you have to train yourself, okay? You have to do it. And the only way to do it is to look at hundreds, maybe even, I don't know, Dawn has probably looked at thousands of properties, but she knows what I'm looking for. She knows what we're looking for, and she can find stuff incredibly quickly. So breaking news, you have to put in the time and effort, and don't be lazy. You find the first bill, oh, I'm going to buy this. Well, no, don't do that. My dad used to say, you know, when I was young, he used to say, you know, if 99 young women go by, you know, like this, and you find the one, you know, you want that one, right? You go after it. But you have to be choosy, Bruce. That was his view. You've got to remember, it was another year, another generation. Maybe that wasn't very politically correct, but that's what he would say. And it was the same thing about buildings. 99 of them go by, and then you go, oh, I want that. And when I find something I want, I go after it. Okay, so there you go, breaking news. All right, let's go back to this. Okay. So then you put in an offer and you tie it up. Tie it up just means you tied it up for a week or 2 weeks, or in case of land, maybe as much as a month or a month and a half, because land is more difficult to buy. There's more due diligence. You tie it up, and then you get some idea of what you're going to do with this property. What is the HABU, the highest and best use? And you put together a preliminary spreadsheet. You know, what uses am I going to put it to? What do you think your cost to buy it is going to be? How much are you going to spend renovating it? And what are your lease rates going to be? So you've got some kind of notion. That spreadsheet will go through 5, 6, 7 generations, but at least start with one. And then you're going to go through all your conditions. You're going to learn how to finance your property. You're going to apply for financing. You're going to secure it. And then you're going to try and close on the deal. Then you're going to animate. In other words, you're going to find a way to add a backyard workshop or some other kind of animation. Like Chris was saying before we started recording, he's just rented an apartment of his to a 1.5 bedroom or 1 bedroom and plus den condo, and he included a tech package in it. That's a kind of an animation, multimedia package. Then you're going to renovate it. You're going to lease it, and leasing is more tricky than you think. All right, there's some proper leasing that you've got to learn, both commercial and residential. It's not as simple as most people think. Then you have to do a CMA. This is a missing link. This is what a lot of people don't do. You do it with a realtor. Realtors are allowed to do comparative market analysis. They're not allowed to do appraisals, but they can do a CMA. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then you submit that to an appraiser, and then you get him or her to appraise the building. Hopefully the appraisal comes back at a number that allows you to refinance and take out some money tax-free because it's just financing, and you buy and hold in most cases. And then you rinse and repeat. All right, so this is the building here at 148 King Street in in Prescott, Ontario. It's about an hour south of Ottawa. It's a very small town. And this is a building that was bought by a 29-year-old client of mine who's very successful. And most investors will not buy these buildings because they look at the commercial and they're afraid. Right? But I've cracked the code on commercial leasing. We'll talk a lot about that in the next 3 weeks. So most people won't touch this. They know that commercial is harder to lease, which is true, that these things could be vacant for a long time, which may not be true. And so they're often overlooked. And I talked to my client, my young client, about Main Street makeover model. He said, I like it, and he's going to do it. And he certainly had the capacity to do it. So The BRRRR method is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Great. What's missing is you've got to know something about highest and best use. You got to know proper financing. You got to know something about animation, adding new revenue streams. That's incredibly important to drive up cap rates. You got to know how to do proper leasing. You got to know how to do a comparative market analysis. And of course, you want to hold on to your properties as best you can. So there's just another look at the building here. It had 2 apartments up here, and then it had 2 commercial spaces at grade. So what did my client decide to do with this property? He made those 2 commercial spaces 1 and made them smaller. By making them smaller at grade, he created space behind them where he could create another apartment, a 3rd apartment. Now he's created this live-work condition. And he rented that apartment in behind the commercial space and the smaller commercial space to an operator of a laundromat. And her commute is from the apartment and back to the laundromat, like, you know, a few feet, right? So added 1 residential unit in behind the laundromat at grade. He's grossing $4,500, just over $4,500 from the 3 apartments now, and the laundromat is contributing another $1,000 a month. This is what it looks like today. It's called Prescott Laundromat, and it's been very successful. And now here is a spreadsheet that will sort of take you through how to do this. And as I said, whether it's a very small project like this or a much bigger one, the numbers are different, but the process is the same. So he bought this property for $132,500, and I'm ignoring closing costs. There were some closing costs, but thanks, Tim. You know, there were some, but I'm ignoring them. Okay, so a few dollars here and there. Rental costs were about $167 for the, you know, the changes he made to the building. So he has a total investment of about $300,000. His gross operating, GOI stands for gross operating income from his 3 apartments, is $4,550. His operating expenses, nothing to do with mortgage, just what he pays for insurance, utilities, any utilities he's responsible for, any repairs and maintenance, property management, and property taxes. All of his OPEX amount to about 34%. So that takes off about $1,500 a month, leaving him with just over $3,000 in NOI, net operating income. That's $36,000 a year. The laundromat is a commercial lease, which means it's a triple net lease. It means that the commercial tenant is paying, in addition to his or her, in this case, her base rent, they're paying operating costs, they're paying their own utilities, and they're paying their share of the property taxes. So the laundromat is contributing another $1,000 a month in NOI, net operating income, because triple net income is equal to net operating income. That's $12,000 a year. So his total net operating income from this little property is now $48,000 a year, which is pretty good. That's a cap rate of 16%. You guys all know how to calculate a cap rate. You take the $48,000 of net income, you divide it by his total cost, that gives you 16%. That is life-changing. If you're investing in Ally Bank at 0.99%, and you take that money out of Ally Bank and you invest it in something at 16%, you know, for somebody as young as Jordan here, or Tim, or Chris, and many other people on the call, 16% a year forever is really good, right? I mean, that is exceptionally good. I don't have any properties at this time that are 16%. Mine are not as good as this one. And often my students and the people I coach do better than me, rats. Anyway, now, so you remember in the BARF method, one of the steps is the CMA, the comparative market analysis. I do them myself. So what I did with my young client is I said, we're going to apply to this income of 48 grand, a fair market value cap rate of 6.5%, which means you take the net operating income, you divide it by 6.5. It says, based on income, that this property is worth almost 740 grand. And we sent that to the appraiser. And the appraiser said, are you kidding? You bought this thing a year and a half ago for 130 something, and you think it's worth almost $750,000. And we said, yeah, we do. Because an investor will buy it now that it's fully leased and renovated and fixed up and doing so well. think about it. If you're an older person like me and you got bags of money, which I don't have, but if I had bags of money, 6.5% return on my money is still a hell of a lot better than 0.99%. Now, as entrepreneurs, we hope to do what my young client did and get 16%. But for an older person like me, or somebody even middle-aged, 6.5% is still a lot better than Ally Bank. And that $739,000 that we sent to the appraiser is what I call an anchor price. You're trying to anchor in the minds of the appraiser that this thing is worth $750,000, even if they think it's ridiculous. And anyway, what he did was he applied an 8% cap rate instead of 6.5% to this income, and he came back with a $600,000 valuation. So in less than 2 years, this young fellow had drove the value of his property, according to the appraisal, from 132 to 600,000. That's pretty good. I'm going to just see if I can exit out of this for, oops, excuse me. I got to find a way to get back to my slide deck because I want to put the, sorry guys. I want to put the link because there's a spreadsheet I did for you. So I'm going to put that spreadsheet that shows all of these calculations in the chat box for you, okay? So hang on a second while I do that. I should be better at this by now. Okay, so I'm going to put it in the chat box. And I'd like you all to just spend a second to grab it. And Jordan, if you don't mind, grab it out of the chat box for Mark and Denise. I know you know how to do this. Peter, you too, Michael, Rose, Donnie, everybody, just grab it because after the call is over, the chat box disappears. So there's a bunch of spreadsheets that I've done. You download them to your computer and then you copy them and you make a second copy. You fool around with a second copy, but keep the first one pristine just in case you screw up the second one, okay? All right, so let me go back to my screen sharing. Sorry it took so long to do that. All right, here we go. All right, share. Okay, so hopefully, so can you, Mark and Jordan, can you see my spreadsheet and sort of my screen again? Okay, so you've got hopefully everybody's copied that link out of the chat box and you've got it. All right, so we know what the bar results look like. He bought it for 132 grand and spent it 300,000, and he was able to take out 150,000 bucks in less than 24 months. Now this is a young man who runs a metal bashing business. He does metal recycling. He has he's only 29, maybe he's 30 now. He has over 100 employees. I think the business does 70 or 80 million dollars a year. So he has money, but he has fallen in love with real estate, and he really understood, the Duke of Westminster. He understands that. But you understand, he has a lot of money. He's young, but he has a lot of money. But I said, do one project, do it yourself. Don't task it out. Know every aspect of it, including the leasing and the animation, all the financing, everything else like that. And then you can do 10 of them because he has the resources to do 10 or 15 a year if he wanted to. All right. So he got the the religion of what he's doing. But now I want to talk a little bit more about finance. Okay, so here I did it a little bit more accurately. I put in the closing cost. So his purchase price was $132,500. Land transfer tax in Ontario is about $1,000 for this scale. And then pretty much everybody, whether you're in the States or in Canada, invests some money in an attorney, title insurance, some disbursements. So he had about $1,900 in disbursements. So his total actual cost of purchase was about $135,000. And he is a client with resources. So here's what he did. All right, he got a first mortgage of 75% of the purchase price, so just under $100,000. Why is it not 80%? The reason it's not 80% is that lenders in small towns, in Zoom towns, they're a little more cautious, and so sometimes you can only get 70 or 75%. In a bigger town like Toronto, you probably can get 80%. So he only needed about $36,000 to close, which for him is not a whole lot of money. And then he needed 100 and I don't know if I got that right. I think he needed 167,000 for reno. So I apologize, this might not be quite right. So the cash required was 168,000. So enough money to close and enough money for rentals, but I did this wrong. So that isn't quite right. But having said that, even I have a couple of billionaires I coach. Even billionaires don't like writing checks. You know, they say rich people never got rich by writing checks. I'm not sure I agree with that, but so even wealthy people have lines of credit, and they have home equity lines of credit, and they have all kinds of other credit facilities. So often they're just taking it from their credit facility rather than just their petty cash. And some of these people have petty cash of, you know, a few $100 million on their balance sheet. Still, they take it from their lines of credit, but it doesn't really matter which way it is. So the fair market value, remember, the appraiser came back at 600,000, which means he got a $450,000 new first mortgage. He paid out the old first mortgage, got $350,000 tax-free cash. He paid back his the equity required, which obviously was I got it wrong. So he was left with 182,000 according to this. Unfortunately, that's wrong. It was 150,000. So there you go. So that, I mean, that when you're a wealthy person and you have lots of cash and you have lots of credit lines, this stuff is really simple. All right. But what do you do if you don't have endless amounts of cash? And everybody knows on the call that the Sens went bankrupt in 2004, and I had to restart my career at age 54. So this is more Bruce than it is my 29-year-old client, right? So what if you only had $10,000 available? That's it. You look in your bank account, and maybe some of that you borrow from a credit card. I'm not saying you should do that, but maybe you did. Maybe you had $5,000 and you got the other $5,000 from your line of credit, which is your credit card. Now you remember you need $36,000 to close. So you're short. Cash deficiency is I got a question for Michael. It's a good question. He said, did your client pay a penalty for breaking the mortgage? So what we do with our mortgages, our first mortgages, is we typically have 1-year terms. A lot of mortgage brokers and a lot of realtors and bankers and lenders will say, oh, take a 3-year, take a 5-year. No, don't do that, for exactly why Michael just asked. And that is because if you're using the BARF method, your intention is within a year or two to refinance. So if you have a 1-year term, you know, then you can refinance at 1. If it's a 2-year term, you're going to have to wait 2 years. All right, because the break fees can be really, really high. So keep coming with the questions. Thank you very much, Michael. So let's say, for example, you need an extra 26 grand. Chiranjeev, did you have a question?
Yes, Bruce, I have. So if you allow me, then I'll ask, but
yeah,
okay.
I like questions. Interrupt me all the time.
Okay, thank you. So Bruce, first question is that for commercial property, not the multifamily, but the commercial business like laundromat and all, what is the minimum down payment required for the bank to close the deal?
Well, first of all, banks aren't interested in us, Chiranjeev, as real estate entrepreneurs. Like if you think TD Bank or Canada, TD Bank, Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Nova Scotia, National Bank, maybe Bank of Montreal, whatever, the CIBC are interested in real estate entrepreneurs. They are not. So in terms of financing, it's important for everybody to have a wonderful, trustable, competent, resourceful mortgage broker. And you talk to him, and keep your eye on the chat box, because we got some mortgage brokers on the call here, Chiranjeev. But once you have a trustable, competent, they can submit your financing request to 12, 15 lenders with the press of a button. Trust me, Chiranjeev, if you had to go to 12, 13, 14, 15 lenders, make 12 or 13 or 14, 15 presentations, you'd give up after 1 or 2. So use a mortgage broker. Often their fees are paid by the lenders. Sometimes you have to pay them, but they are, in my opinion, they're worth their weight in gold. For a pure commercial building, it's 65%. For a pure residential building, it can be with CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, it can be 85%. For a building that's mixed like this, typically I get 75%.
Okay, Bruce, so let's say that I have a lender who is credit union and they ask me to give a 35% down payment.
Yeah.
So with 35% down payment, can I give a 25% down payment and 10% a second mortgage if this is acceptable?
So you have to ask your first mortgage lender, you have to disclose to your first mortgage lender that you're going to put a second mortgage in place. Some of the secondary lenders like Equitable Bank and Home Trust and maybe your credit union, they don't care if you got 3 or 4 mortgages. Your insurance company might worry about that. Okay, it might be hard to get insurance on a property that has like 4 mortgages. They're worried about insurance fraud. You're going to burn down the building and run away. Okay, so it is more complicated than you might think. But I do think that many of them will allow second mortgages. I know Equitable Bank will, Home Trust will. You'll have to ask your credit union. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah.
No problem. So now let's say, who am I going to pick on? Let's see, who will I pick on? All right, we'll pick on Peter. All right, we'll just use Peter's name. So let's say Peter is the client here, and Peter's a poor dude, and he's only got $10,000 available. So he's $26,000 short. So he's going to go to investors and say, hey, listen, I got this great building at 148 King Street West in Prescott. I want to buy. It's going to make us a ton of money, but I'm short 26 grand. Can you each chip in $13,000? And maybe, Peter, you go to Aunt Mary, who's your investor A, and you go to rich Uncle Buck, who is your investor B. All right. Now, if you think about it, gentlemen and ladies, if Peter puts in 10 grand, Mary puts in 13, and Buck puts in 13, you would think that Peter's only going to end up with about 25% of this building. He's going to do all the work for 25%. Now, because Peter's got a wonderful teacher and coach by the name of Bruce Firestone, he's not going to settle for 25% ownership. He wants more. So how is he going to do that? He's going to use something I call the Mad River formula. What he's going to say to Mary is, Mary, you're going to put in $2,500 as equity, and you're going to lend the other $10,550 to the project. And he goes to Buck and says the same thing. And so, Peter, you're going to offer Mary $2,500 of equity and Buck at $2,500. And the debt is going to be, say, this is typically what I use, is going to have an interest rate of 8%, and it's capitalized for up to 3 years, but could be paid off sooner. And Chiranjeev, here's something that you can do to work around if your credit union tells you, no, you can't have a second mortgage. What a lot of people will do, investors will do, is they'll just take a promissory note from Peter or from you. So rather than take this debt, Peter or Chiranjeev, and register it as a second mortgage, then you can just sign a simple promissory note. All right? Okay. And it's simple interest. Don't compound the interest. It's simple interest. Maybe it's 6%. I think Ruben uses 6%. I typically am a little more generous to my investors. I pay 8%, but it's capitalized, which means you don't have to pay it until the end of the term. All right. We'll have to wait for you, Chiranjeev. Hang on a second. So now look at the ownership. Peter, you with me here so far? The ownership is Peter put in 10 grand. Mary put in 2,500, and Buck put in 2,500. So the total equity in this project is 15 grand. Now Peter owns 2/3 of this building. That's a heck of a lot better. Now you're going to say, well, that's not fair to Mary and Buck. Actually, it is, because if I am an investor, if I was a rich dude again, and I was investing in Peter's property, I don't want to own 51% of it. I don't want to own 60% of it. I don't want to own 75%. I want Peter to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning when the plumbing isn't working, right? I want him to own more of it. And I like the fact that some of my money is invested in debt, because that debt will eventually come back to me. So now Mary owns 16.7%, Buck owns 16.7%, and Peter owns, the entrepreneur, owns 2/3. Now, how do you get the money for the renovation? And again, I got the number wrong. This is supposed to be 167,500. So I apologize. My spreadsheet that I just gave you the link to is wrong. But anyway, so the rentals are 167,500. Then you can probably get some kind of a construction mortgage. All right. If you get a construction mortgage, and there are a lot of construction mortgages around, they're going to want to take out the first mortgage right away and be in first place. They don't want to be in second place. They're not going to do a second mortgage. But they'll often, if you get a value, an appraised value of, say, as if complete, of $600,000, then they'll lend you $231,000, which is enough to pay out the first mortgage and to pay all your rentals. And you might be able to do RRSP, second mortgages, and they can go up to 100% loan to value. And we've got an expert on that on the call with us, and Denise and Stuart McPherson. I'm not an expert in RRSP mortgages, but they are. So you can often find financing for your renovations. I'm doing a project with Mark Turner and Jordan Turner, which you'll see. Hopefully, if I don't run out of time today, you'll see. And you know, my construction lender took out the first mortgage and has replaced it with enough money to, as I said, pay out the first mortgage and to fund the construction. Now, construction mortgages are not cheap. They're often around 9.9% or 9.99%, just under 10, and they have fees. All right, so they're not cheap. But to most entrepreneurs, including real estate entrepreneurs, the availability of financing is more important than the cost, as long as it's a bridge to getting lower cost financing. All right, so now let's look at what happens here in this case. In this case, we still have the same fair market value, which is $600,000. The new first mortgage is 75% $450,000. Pay out the old first mortgage. If you have a RRSP second or construction loan, you have to pay that out. So you get some cash out. You pay the debt back to Mary and to Buck from the refinancing. So think about that. You, Peter, as the entrepreneur, you're not paying Mary and rich Uncle Buck back. The refinancing is doing that for you. The building is doing that for you. And then you're going to take out some cash tax-free. These numbers are not actually accurate. I am going to change the spreadsheet after the call is over today, because I got this number wrong. It should be 167.5. So I'm $35,000 out, but the principle is the same. Now, think about this again. This is the ownership structure. Peter owns 2/3 of it, and then his two investors own 1/3. I often talk and preach a non-partnership partnership model. There are 2 chairs, or in this case, 3 chairs in heaven waiting for the first partners to get there and still like each other. So what that means is that, say Peter does 2 projects like this. So Peter, 3 projects like this. So Peter owns 2/3 of 3 projects, and Aunt Mary and rich Uncle Buck own 1/3 together. So they could separate out after a few years, where Peter could own 100% of 2 buildings, and Mary and Buck could own 100% of one of their own. So you can actually eventually divorce in a friendly way before you get into arguments about who's doing too much work. Should we sell them? Should we keep them? Should we refinance them? Try and think about exiting the partnership before you get into a fight, right? All right, so now one more thing here. Now I told you the internal rate of return is important. So just to prove to you guys that this is a good deal for the investors, look at the internal rate of return for these guys. If Peter can do this deal, remember, Mary only has $2,500 invested in the building, for which he owns 16.7%. If he can do this refinance within a year, her share of the tax-free proceeds is $32,000, almost $33,000. That's an internal rate of return of 1,216%. If it takes Peter 2 years to do it, so she puts in $2,500 here at time 0, she gets nothing in year 1, but at the end of year 2, she gets her 32 grand from the distribution. She's made 263% on her money. And if it takes Peter 3 years, and if it takes him longer than 3 years, he's fired. But if it takes him 3 years, she's still making, and so is rich Uncle Buck, 136%. So think about this. Mary and Buck, the investors, are making 136% on their money over 3 years. That's incredible. And they still own part of this building. And so assuming that there's cash flow coming out, they still own part of it. So it's a very, very, very good deal. All right, Chiranjeev, unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks, Bruce. So I'll come back to the promising note. So I didn't understand. I don't know the concept of promising note. Like how can I do that? Like what is that?
So you can just go online. You know, the internet is an inexhaustible supply of information, and Google promissory note. And if you're not comfortable doing that, your lawyer, your attorney will certainly know that. It's a very simple thing. It just simply, I mean, basically it says, I, Chiranjeev, or I, Bruce Firestone, promise to pay Mary, you know, X number of dollars maturing on, you know, such and such a day or earlier, with 8% interest or 6% interest capitalized, blah, blah, blah. You sign it, she signs it, you're done. It's like a one-page promissory note. And a lot of investors, the reason people invest in any project isn't really because they can get 1,216% return on investment. And that's not really why they do it. They do it because they're excited about the project and they like and trust you. That's really the only reason they do it. And of course, they want to make some money too. I mean, investors are interested in ROI. But the real, if they don't like and don't trust you, and they're not excited about the project, I don't care if you have a 1,216% return on investment. I'm not interested. It's too high. I don't believe it anyway. They won't invest. Do you understand that, Chiranjeev?
Yep.
They invest in you because they like and trust you. And so, yes, a mortgage, I mean, certainly Denise and Stuart can tell you that if you're doing an RRSP mortgage, it has to be a mortgage. It has to be registered on title. There's no question about that. But a lot of investors, certainly the people I work with, I have a few investors who helped me with one of the Belleville buildings, two of them actually. And, you know, and they say, yeah, that's a promissory note signed by you, Bruce, is fine, but make sure your wife signs it too. You know, she's my partner and everything, right? But it's very simple. And the other thing that it does for you is you do not, as far as I know, have to disclose those promissory notes to your bank. So the bank looks at you. Hey, listen, I probably shouldn't be saying this. It is being recorded, right? But your bank will look at you and say, let's say, yeah, you know, where's Peter on this call here? I picked on him so much here. But, you know, let's say Peter goes to the bank, and the bank, as far as they're concerned, he owns 100% of this building, because the ownership, the 1/3 ownership to Mary and Buck, that's hidden from view, right? Because it's secured by a promissory note. If there's a mortgage, a second mortgage on it, then obviously they know that it's not. So your personal balance sheet starts to look better and better and better, and that allows you to do even more borrowing. I'm not saying you should do that, but a lot of people have. Okay. Yeah, probably Denise says it better than I could, or Stuart says it better. A promissory note, Chiranjeev, is simply an IOU. I don't know if you ever saw that movie Dumb and Dumber. They had a briefcase full of cash, but at the end of the movie, they'd spent all the money and they put IOUs in there, like I owe you $400,000 for a Lamborghini I bought. All right, so there you go. All right, let me go back to my screen share. Let's see, where was I? I think here. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through this in excruciating detail. I wrote a little handbook. It's like 10 or 11 pages, and I have a link somewhere in here which I'll give you on the chat box, how to find investors. I get that all the time, and we could spend 3 weeks just doing that. I'm not going to do that. But finding investors is surprisingly easy. And why is that? Because they have money but no time. They're busy. They have no time. Because their alternative investments are sucking. Like most people who have mutual funds and financial advisors, they don't really like their financial advisors in many cases. And they enjoy investing in good quality, trustable entrepreneurs. I mentioned that earlier. So finding investors is actually quite easy. And how do I do it? I look at my network of people. People you pay should all obviously be strategic investors for you. So you look at your accounts payable, right? You look at, hey, when we bought another building in Belleville, one of our investors, I hope you don't mind me saying, Mark, was Mark, right? Mark is our contractor on site on the first building we bought there, and then he wanted to participate. So we pay Mark some money, and then Mark paid us, right? People you pay should eventually pay you in the sense that they're co-investors. So there's all kinds of ways to expand your network. You look at your accounts payable, your clients, right? Your customer base, your tenant base. your future clients and customers, your list of suppliers, your trade creditors, your marketing partners. I mean, there's just an endless number of your family and friends, Rich Uncle Buck and Aunt Mary. There's any number of people who are interested in you and in what you're doing if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, there's money. And then you can always ask your mortgage broker, your realtor, your accountant, your real estate lawyer, your architect. There's just an endless number of people that you already know, but you don't know you know. But if you think about it, there's an endless number of people that you can talk to. And then you can do things like join Oreo. I think Denise and Stuart belong to Oreo, maybe to Rain too. These are big real estate investor organizations. I think you get a chance to stand up and say, hey, I got this great project. Anybody interested in co-investing with me? So there's an enormous number of ways to do it. And one of the most important is number 4 on my list here, holding a webinar. People like free webinars. And so if you're trying to find, a few tens of thousands or a few hundreds of thousands or a few millions even, holding a webinar can actually be very, very, very useful. I also like strategic partners. What is a strategic partner? A strategic partner is somebody who has a strategic interest in your success. For example, I gave one. Mark Turner has a strategic interest in my success as an investor because it means more work for him and his crew. So maybe when I buy another building, he says, hey, maybe I should co-invest, which I was very open to. When I was building the Palladium, which is now called Canadian Tire Center, PCL was, which is Edmonton-based, one of the largest construction companies in the world, provided us with a guaranteed maximum price of $245 million to build that building. Today, it'd be over $1 billion, but back then it was $245 million. A guarantee from PCL, a huge company doing billions and billions and billions of dollars a year, is worth something. It's not quite as good as the guarantee of the government of Canada or the government of the United States, but it's a very good guarantee. And you can finance against that. And we certainly did. We had a guarantee, and hey, the bank goes, oh, it's guaranteed by PCL. All right, we'll lend you the money. So we built the damn thing. All right. So, okay. So I better get out of this if I can, figure it out. Oop. And I want to put the link into the chat box again. Sorry about back and forth like that. So I'm going to put the link in there. This is the link, if you don't mind copying it out of the, so how to find investors. So I'd like you to read this stuff if you can find the time. So copy it out of the chat box, and let's see how we're doing for time. We're coming to you pretty soon. See if I can jump ahead here somewhere. Where am I going to go? I got lots of stuff for you guys, but I'm skipping a few slides as we talk. Where am I going next? Yeah, okay, this looks good. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and this is a good lead into you, Mark. Oops. All right, so as you guys know, I like Belleville, but just before I talk about Belleville, I want to go back to talk about, this is one of my daughters. I got 5 kids. This beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed bombshell is Rachel. She's my oldest daughter, and this is my youngest son, Matthew. So this is Rachel, and she got married to a very nice young man. His name's Patrick Kerr, and they were living in Toronto in an apartment. And Rachel is like a super high, executive in a huge insurance company making ridiculous amounts of money, and her husband is just as successful, Patrick. But even for the 2 young people who are just doing fabulously well, Rachel and Patrick, excuse me, buying a house in Toronto is really expensive. Just a very modest house, $2.5–3.5 million. So they got permission from their companies to work from home on a permanent basis. So they moved to Whitby. Whitby's about 50 or 60 minutes from downtown Toronto. So Rachel and Patrick moved to Whitby. And, what people are doing when they're moving to these Zoom towns, Whitby certainly is a Zoom town, is they're not just buying homes for about 1/3 or 1/4 of what it would cost you in Toronto. They're also buying homes that are animated. And I wanted to show you these. These were built, I think, in the 80s. And, you know, so whoever built them, I don't know who it was thinking ahead. So these are doubles. So this on the left-hand side is half the double, and this is the other half, and the main entrance is over here. But what I want you to focus on is this door here. So each of these half doubles have these doors at the lower level. And you can see a little bit better picture here. What these doors these are the doors that lead into a 2-bedroom apartment. So back in the 80s, they were thinking about animations. Back then, it wasn't just Firestone discovering it, you know, in the 2000s, right? It was real estate entrepreneurs back then who realized that having some income from a separate apartment, or maybe you just have a child who's an adult child who's moved back in with a kid, or you have a mother that your grandmother you need to take care of. So buying a property like this for kids today in Zoom towns I mean, this is an $800,000 property as opposed to a $3 million property in Toronto. And $800,000 is still expensive, but it's affordable for people who are doing as well as Rachel and Patrick. And then they put this 2-bedroom on Airbnb, and basically they live for free, right? That's a pretty good price, living for free. All right, so enough of that. So my wife picked Belleville as one of the Zoom towns for us to invest in. Belleville is growing amazingly quickly. They just announced, I think fairly recently, that another 3,000 homes are going into just a single subdivision around a golf course. Isn't that right, Mark? Yeah. And, you know, it's a town of 56,000, which I swear there's 100,000 people in Toronto right now thinking about moving to Belleville. And certainly they will not be able to build houses fast enough to accommodate the population growth. The other thing I liked about it is it's 5 minutes to Prince Edward County, which is wine country for Ontario. And that's a big deal, as you'll see in a minute. So this is the building that we bought on the main street in downtown Belleville. Many of you have seen this before. It's a 3-story building. It was vacant. The services had been disconnected. It was a power of sale. It had some commercial space on the ground floor, some commercial space on the second floor, and then some 6 beat-up old apartments that hadn't been occupied for 20 years or more on the top floor. This is me doing the building inspection in October, I think, or maybe August, or I don't remember, August or September, October of 2020. So there you go. That was me doing it. And here you can see, here's a picture of Mark and one of our designers, Diane Beaulieu. And this is, of course, the front elevation on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is the rear elevation. So you can imagine that there are building owners that I think you can have a jail for building owner, bad building owners. That's how bad these people were. You know, the building had structural issues, and what's your first clue, Sherlock, that the building has structural issues is when the second floor windows are popping out, and instead of fixing the structural issues, you can see what they do, they boarded up the windows. You know, it's just ridiculous. But this building is an absolute treasure. This is what it looked like, I think, in the 1970s. It was very beautiful. And you can see now as Mark starts to, you know, renovate it with his crew, once he had demolished all the crap that was in there, which was unbelievable, he uncovered this 150-year-old building. It's celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. And look at the spaces that are unveiled. These are fabulous buildings, 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot ceiling height, double brick, just classic. And many of you have seen this picture on the left, sorry, on the right-hand side here. This is the old stables, right? And what it looked like before. Do I have a picture of what it looked like before? I don't know if I have one here. Maybe not. What it looked like before was just a mess. But once Mark had uncovered it, it was just this beautiful stone walls, brick walls, 14-foot ceiling heights. This is that great. So this is a weird sticking out piece at the back. And then here's Mark showing, I don't know if this is the second or third floor, and he rescued all of these old hot water radiator heating. Hot water radiators are the best way, in my opinion, to heat buildings in North America. right? If you have forced air systems, somebody sneezes on the second floor, you get sick on the third floor. Not just because of the pandemic, it's just the worst. Hot water heating systems are very effective, efficient, they're very comfortable buildings to live in. And so he's rescued and rehabilitated all of these, or most of them. And this is what the building will eventually look like when it's finished, a reinvigorated facade, some commercial spaces at grade. There will be, I think, 4 apartments on the second floor, 2 of which are Airbnb, 6 on the third floor, and some commercial spaces. And here's the weird sticking up piece at the bottom here. This is what the building looks like today. Actually, it looks a little nicer than this. These pictures are a little bit older, but you can see that Mark and his team have peeled off that horrible aluminum siding. You can sort of see it's coming off here, and the brick has been reestablished, and this whole area here, the brick veneer here and the metal here has also come off and will be replaced. So the facade will be beautiful when it's finished. So I do have a picture. So this picture on the right here is what that weird sticking out piece looked like. And everybody told me we should tear it down. But we decided that we would not do that. We're preservationists. And so once Mark had and his crew had cleaned it up, it's this beautiful space. So what do you do with a space like this? And this is where it's very important to think about cracking the code for commercial leasing. This is what frightens most investors, why they don't want to buy these buildings. If they have commercial space, they're afraid they're going to get stuck with empty space for years. And that is often true, but there's ways around that. I'm going to explain what we did. So what we did, now you have to think about, we've just gone 90 degrees. We've translated it 90 degrees. What we're doing with that space, so this space here, is we're going to put in, there's a patio here at the back, a 1-bedroom apartment here, and an artisan space here. So what that means is we have created a live-work condition where you can live in a 1-bedroom apartment here and run your business here, and it has its own entrance. Of course, your apartment has its own entrance, but the commute to work is through this connecting door. This is what people want. And I'm going to ask you guys now to help me out, all right? So get ready with your fingers. I want to run a poll. My wife and I are having a debate. And by the way, when I have a debate with my wife, she almost always wins. So I need help here, okay? I believe that you should theme buildings. Okay, I think you should. If you have an Airbnb, you should theme it. I don't know what the theme is, but you should. Rather than just be an also-ran, one of 10,000 apartments in Toronto that are on Airbnb. What's the difference between one and the other? So what is the theme for this building at 249253 Front Street? And Mark and Jordan, you get to vote too. Dawn wants to make it elegance personified. She is going to produce apartments and commercial spaces, artisan spaces, workshop spaces that are really elegant. I trust her to do it with Mark's help and Shelley and Brad and our whole crew. They'll produce these beautifully elegant spaces that are truly elegant. I get that. So elegance is her theme. Elegance is her theme. However, my theme is a little different. We have leased part of the ground floor to Loyalist College. It's a local college, and they're putting an accelerator in there. So like co-working space, we'll have 20, 30, maybe 40 startups in there starting new businesses. They're entrepreneurs. And they're not just for Loyalist students or Loyalist grads. Anybody can apply, right, to be accepted. And so we have Loyalists there with their co-working space. And by the way, I didn't show it to you, right next to the Loyalist space, there's another apartment for an entrepreneur in residence. So the entrepreneur in residence can live there and commute, a few feet and mentor and coach those startups. So again, at grade, we have that live work condition. And then we have that weird sticking out piece, which was the old stables, where it would be a live work condition. So somebody might be a physiotherapist and have her physiotherapy clinic in her apartment right there. Maybe she's a hairdresser and she lives here and has her hairdresser thing there. Okay. One of my daughters is a fashion designer. She could have her apartment there and have her seamstresses working on clothing right next door. Okay, those are live work conditions. That's the direction that I'm going in. And that's what I mean when I say we've cracked the code in terms of leasing. That's what people want. So my theme is entrepreneur house. Dawn's theme is elegance. So if you don't mind, if you like elegance as a theme, then and that might be the right theme, type into the chat box E. If you like entrepreneur house, type into the chat box H. And Chiranjeev, are you still with us?
Yes, Bruce, I'm here.
So would you mind counting how many want H for entrepreneur house and how many want E for elegance? All right, so everybody start voting. We got some E's, we got some H's, we got some more H's. I'll leave it to you, Chiranjeev. I always pick on you.
Yep.
All right. All right. So let me go back into my slide deck here. See if I can get to the next thing. So Chiranjeev, when you get the final count, let me know.
Sure.
Okay. So where am I? Okay, Mark, you stand by. You're almost on. So I just want to comment a little bit more about theming. But before I do that, I should tell you one more thing. To get permission from many cities and towns today to put residential at grade, you actually sometimes have to apply for what's called a minor variance. So I wanted to put 2 apartments at grade, one that would work with the Loyalist College Accelerator and one that would work with, you know, that in the stables would work for a live work condition. So I actually went to the Committee of Adjustment in Belleville for a minor variance. It's not too expensive. It doesn't cost that much. It doesn't take that much time. And I was lucky, both times the committee agreed. So we did get permission from the city to do it. All right, so there you go. So sometimes you have to ask. So what we got from Chiranjeev is 17 went with H, entrepreneur house, and 5 went with elegance. Okay, that's about right. That's what I would have thought, because elegance is a broader market. So there's a lot of reasons why we might want to use elegance, because, you know, it's a broader market. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. But I think for this building, I think it is going to be entrepreneur house. And it's not just because I think I'm right, which often I do, but it's because I think that's what it is. But anyway, we'll see. Thank you very much for doing that, guys. That really helps me. Okay, so I want to talk for 1 more minute about theming, and then Mark, you're up. This is something else I've shown before. It's called Cabin Faubert. It's a 1-bedroom log cabin in the middle of nowhere in Quebec. It was purchased by Carrie Ann McMahon, a young woman, for $335,000, and then she renovated with another $30,000 or $35,000. After doing all that work, her realtor told her she could get between $900 and $1,000 a month in rent. I don't have to tell you what the cap rate is on that. It's probably 2 or 3%. This is terrible. So then Carrie Ann called me and said, what do I do? And I said, do you know anything about Airbnb? She said, not a damn thing. I said, well, you're going to have to put it on Airbnb and you're going to have to theme it. She said, what is the theme? I said, I don't know. It's your place. You think about it. So she did think about it, and it was her idea, not mine. She themed it as a romantic getaway. And, you know, you can see she's got lots of board games. So, you know, you take your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your life partner, your husband, your wife there, no kids. You know, you play lots of games and you put on a nice fire and all this stuff. And you've got, you know, some movies as well to play. Everybody gets a free bottle of wine from this is in Quebec. It's in Wakefield, Quebec. It's a nice part of Quebec. I mean, Quebec is beautiful. Everybody gets a free bottle of wine, and you can see everything is themed as very Canadian, as truly Canadian, right? Even her cupboard doors are like barn doors, right? She did all of that, and she put up like a chalkboard, welcome, you know, and all kinds of messages, you know, just simple stuff. This is the kitchen. This is the bathroom. It's beautifully done. This is the bedroom, and look, even the, she doesn't have curtains. She got barn doors that open. It's all themed, right? Romantic getaway. And here's her popcorn machine, which everybody uses. You watch movies, drink a little bit of beer or wine or whatever, eat popcorn, do whatever else. And she has upstairs, she has a loft. And she originally had, what are these bunkies, or what do you call those things? Bunk beds. But she took them out and replaced them with games. I told her, look, games are really big. Couples that play together stay together. My wife and I have all kinds of games we play together, backgammon and mini ping pong and all kinds of silly things, horseshoe toss, ring toss, giant Jenga. I mean, they're silly, right? But they're fun. And so she replaced, she didn't want kids. So I said, take the bunk beds out and put in games. So the whole loft is now full of games, right? This is Carrie Ann here. What's really cool about this thing is the worse the weather gets in between Quebec and Ontario. I don't know who has worse weather, but Carrie Ann, the worse the weather gets, the busier she gets. And remember, her realtor told her $900 to $1,000 a month, ma'am. That's it. She nets between $4,000 and $6,000 a month, and has for years now, and during the pandemic as well. She had some outages when Airbnbs were closed, but it's been a phenomenal success. So whether you're building you got a 1-bedroom cabin in the middle of nowhere, or you've got 12 apartments I'm going to stop sharing now. In that my 3-story building in Belleville with some commercial space, give it a theme. Give it a theme. It'll make you stand out. It'll help your branding. You don't have all the money in the world, right, to do that. Now, the last comment before I go over to Mark and Jordan and ask for we go to their presentation, is that Steve Shepard told me. Steve Shepard is my real estate attorney. He's a wonderful young lawyer, probably the best real estate lawyer I've ever known. He told me that when I rent that entrepreneur residence apartment, make it part of the Loyalist College lease. When I rent that other apartment in the stables with, say, a physiotherapy clinic or a registered massage clinic, write it up as a commercial lease with accessory residential. And that's because if you do that, it's not covered by the Residential Tenancy Act. The Residential Tenancy Act in Ontario is very, very, very restrictive. In the last 2.5 years, landlords have been allowed to raise the rent in Ontario once by 1.2% on January 1st of this year. Now, I can tell you our costs as a landlord have gone up multiples and multiples and multiples of 1.2%. So not having to be constrained by the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act, is really important. And in this 12 apartment, these 12 apartments that will be coming on the market soon, I hope soon, Mark, 6 of them will be exempt from the Residential Tenancy Act. That's a huge profit driver. The 2 that will go, as I said, with commercial spaces, the 2 units that we're going to put on Airbnb, and then there'll be 2 more that will be rented with other commercial space in the building. So 6 will be exempt and 6 will not. And that is a big profit driver. All right, Mark and Jordan, unmute yourself, and I'm going to share your slides here in just a second. So give me 1 minute to find them. Okay, here we are. All right, I'm getting there. Huh. Oh, I got the wrong slide deck. Sorry, guys. Okay, I think I have the right slide deck, just the wrong slide. Oh, there we go. So, Mark, can you see yourself on the screen?
Yes, you bet.
All right, so we're really lucky today, you guys, to have somebody who is a constructor. He's not a Joe College guy like me. He actually knows what he's doing. Mark, you've been in Belleville now for how many years?
Since 1987.
All right. So if you remember this slide deck, this is the one we used for our cocktail party.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I want you to talk to the slides. I'll change the slides. Over to you, brother.
Okay, so this is Signal Brewery. It's a beautiful historical property that's on the river, Moira River, just north of Belleville. And for years, for probably centuries, it was a distillery. Very famous, well-known, played a key role in the bootlegging business back in the 20s and before that. And so this picture is taken on the back, what became the patio. I'm installing some limestone stairs there, and the gravel I'm standing on became a patio, which is right beside the river, approximately 5,000 square foot patio. Now that building is Paul Dinkel's building. He's been in town for quite a while. It's right on Bridge Street, right in the core of Belleville itself. Beautiful architecture, as you can see. Dinkel's done his best to preserve the architecture as much as possible. He's a firm believer in restoration. He owns several buildings. We've worked on some of his buildings with him.
And Mark, what kind of work did you have to do to bring these buildings back to this condition?
Well, quite often it's structural, as in your building, Bruce, the China Gate. There were structural issues to address first. Quite often buildings have been painted over. They've been painted over for decades and then clad with steel to hide the ugly paint. So basically you end up peeling back layers, decades and decades layers of cover, whatever sort it might be. Sometimes there's deterioration in the stone and brick has to be addressed. Always varying issues. Any components that are comprised of wood need to be restored and or replaced. Now this is Paul Dinkel's building again. The stone and the facade, the arches, and he's got some beautiful canopies there he installed. At night, the building is beautiful. It's well lit. As you can see, there's lamps on the front of it, but it's lit up at night across the top. We installed the lighting across the top 3 years ago, I think. It's stunning. It's one of the main cornerstone buildings of Belleville on Bridge Street. Now this is right across from our Maze Mall building that I'm partnered with, Jordan and I, with Bruce and Don and two other fellows from Toronto. And it was covered in steel. So once again, we had to peel the steel off and restore the brick. It's there it is there. We've restored the brick. The windows that you see, they were covered up with steel and board. So we've actually found the sashes inside and reinstalled them. You might see the Dominion Store sign that's mounted. We found that sign inside. It's circa 1940s, so we restored it, and to generate a little excitement, we hung the sign on the marquee board. We purchased the lamps to kind of match a red theme. We built the marquee board and trimmed it out red. And this is prior to the building being sold. So all this was done basically to generate interest and just dress the street up a little bit and have some fun. This is a storefront, Scallywag Toys. It was in need of a little bit of assistance. Everything was aged, and that's what we did with it. The sign was aged, and the whole facade was aged. So we gave it a little bit of a facelift. The owners didn't want to spend a great deal of money. They just wanted to clean it up. The city helped a little bit with the facade grant. So given the fact it was Scallywag Toys, we did a little bit of a gold work across the fascia board there, just to make it a little bit of frivolous decoration there.
So Mark, one of the things that I teach, and I want to know if you agree with it, is that it's often the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% of the money that you spend on a project that actually counts for anything. The reason I say that is that a lot of people, they run out of money, which is not unusual. And they don't dress up the facade. You know, they don't put in the planters. They don't put in the great signage. They don't put in the outside lamps. You know, inside, you know, they don't do what you did, refinish the radiators and make them look what they are, a work of art, really. It's that, you know, for you, so everybody understands. You know, I do CMAs, comparative market analysis, before I get an appraiser to come in, and I send it to him or her, and I anchor the price in their mind. But it doesn't matter how much work I do on a CMA and how high I set that anchor price. If the appraiser comes in and there's still garbage on the floor and the outside looks like crap and the landscaping looks like crap, my appraisal is going to look like crap. Do you agree with that, Mark?
Oh yeah, it's the final strokes. It's like anything else. If you chintz on the final strokes, it's going to really detract from your whole project. It's just like art. It's the final brush strokes that make it stand out, pop, and appeal. So you know, in anything, you know, you have to pay attention to detail in the last stretch, and if not, you're going to defeat yourself. This is Tammy's wigs. There's the work primarily was done on the front. It's a vinyl siding now, and in the end it was a stone facade, as you can see, and a deck for accessibility. And that was also funded in part through the city, the facade grant program. Most of our cities and towns now have facade grant programs and various programs to provide incentive to the owners to upgrade and dress up and create rental space. This was a building that was badly in need of some attention. This is Gein's Pharmacy. They've been there. Gein's family have been here since the early 1800s, and Gein's was an active pharmacy up until sometime, I think, in the 70s. Then the Gein's moved uptown to a plaza which served their interests better. And by the way, Bruce, this building is now for sale. We finished it last fall a little bit, and we still got a sag or two in the windows, but well, that might change as well. But here's a little bit of a different version than what it looked like when we started. This is L'Auberge de France, right beside Scallywag Toys. We did some brickwork there. This is a before. You can't really see the brickwork, but we put new windows in and did some brickwork and dressed it up. The owners, Jean-Marc and Sharanda. Jean-Marc's a chef. He's from France. They moved into the second and third floors, and they've done a stunning job. We did some brickwork inside and a little bit of other work for them, but they've created a beautiful space, which seems to be a trend now. The owners of buildings, they work downstairs and they live upstairs. There's four families I can think of that are doing just that now.
So, I mean, you're just reconfirming for me this the desire to have that live-work condition.
Yes, yeah, we've got Lafferty's and Kim and Zubin Gillespie and Jean-Marc and Sharanda. They all work downstairs in their shops and live upstairs. This is one of my favorites. The before picture on the right, you can see we're just removing paint, but this was clad in steel as well. I don't think we have a picture of that. But when it was painted and we couldn't really see the rosettes and the yellow brickwork, that's a two-tone red brick and yellow. But in the beginning, you can see the middle window was just rectangular, and we had to build the arches in the middle and new sill stones and install the windows. But we were quite surprised when we found what amounts to coining, the coining of the corners and the decorative work on the arches. All the arches had to be rebuilt. The two in the middle had to be built from scratch. So this turned out spectacularly, and it surprised all of us when we found out what was underneath.
So Chiranjeev has asked in the chat box, what's the construction cost per square foot of a commercial multifamily? And I think I should answer that, Mark. Chiranjeev, you got your calculator? Okay, unmute yourself.
Yes, yes, I do have.
So we bought that building, the one that I showed earlier, for approximately $285,000, right? So that was the cost to purchase it. We had a budget of $2 million to renovate it, right? Because I mean, basically we got a new building, and it's actually costing more. So the bad news, Chiranjeev, is that our total construction mortgage is now 2.5 million. So add the 2.5 million to the 285,000. What do you get?
One minute, Bruce, I'm calculating.
How much?
Plus 285, 2785, so 2.785 million.
Yeah, and it's 12,000 square feet. So divide by 12,000.
Sorry, what square feet, Bruce?
12,000.
12,000. Okay. So $232 and some change, 0.08.
Sounds about right. So to produce an elegant, to use my wife's name, my wife's terminology, we're producing basically a brand new, really elegant, top of the line, 21st century building of classic proportions with 12, 14, 15, 16 foot ceiling heights for about $250 a square foot. I can tell you that at least in my experience today, and who put that in there? I think that was probably Tim. Yeah, Tim puts in that in his experience, brand new, it would cost $450 a square foot. And Chiranjeev, I hate to tell you this, but I'm seeing concrete buildings now coming in at $600 a square foot. So $250 a square foot is more than I expected. It is. It's over budget. That's the bad news. It's over budget. The good news is that the rents have gone up, the income has gone up, and the appraised value has gone way up. I was astounded when the appraisal came back at $5.5 million as if complete. So the bad news is I thought the project was going to be significantly less than it is actually turning out to cost. That's the bad news. But the good news is rents are up, income is up. Some of the stuff that I'm doing now, this the live work stuff and this Airbnb stuff, like Airbnbs in Belleville are like off the charts expensive. $300 a night for a 2-bedroom. To me, it's ridiculous, but that's what it's costing. It's right next to, like I said, to Prince Edward County. So our income has gone way up and our valuation has gone way up. So our costs went up, but our value went up even more. So that's the bad news, good news. The good news, the other good news about this is that it's still a hell of a lot less than if we had just bought a piece of land and built a new building, which would, as I think Tim is right, it would have been $450 a square foot. And Tim is asking, or Jake is asking, what do you find the added costs are versus residential construction? Tim, do you want to answer, unmute yourself and answer that?
So the added cost with residential is all of the taps, fixtures, granite tiles, all those things compared to building out a commercial space where you're producing the 4 walls and mechanical systems go along with it. So that's why I said medium trim level. You could go elegance and make it very high end, and then your costs go up accordingly. So that's where I get the 450. And the difference is your choices of your internal materials.
So just so you guys know, we have some very experienced people here. Obviously, Mark and Jordan. Tim Reed is very experienced. He looks younger than he is, and he has a lot of experience in this stuff. He's both a mortgage broker, a developer. He's got some amazing stuff on the go. And of course, Denise and Stuart have built many, many different properties. Denise and Stuart, I know you're doing quite well on construction costs. You're building some multi-res now. What are you, brand new, what are your costs coming in per square foot?
There you go.
There, we're unmuted. So we're looking at the one in Rockland right now is costing us about $200 per square foot.
And how many units is that?
That's going to be 4. So it's 5,200 square feet.
Yeah, side by side duplex, each with a secondary suite.
Yeah.
And does the 200, I mean, because the 250 or thereabouts that I quoted includes, of course, land cost. Does the 200 include land cost?
No, that's just the construction cost. That doesn't include the land cost or any of the soft costs that we've incurred up to this point.
Mind you, our land cost is only 150K. So it wasn't that expensive.
When you tell me that.
I know, but that was bought like 2 years, almost like 2.5 years ago now. It's
That's
worth a whole lot more now.
Oh, yeah, it's worth way more. But Stuart and Denise, when you add in, like, because the $230 to $250 a square foot for our building, the one that we are doing, that includes, you know, well over 125,000, if not $150,000 of soft costs. To take a building, and I think Bhupinder is asking this question, to take a building, Bhupinder, that was built 150 years ago and bring it up to 2021 or 2022 building code, it is very expensive in terms of engineering, electrical, all the things that we have to do. It's really extraordinary. So I wouldn't, I've never actually, I have it on my spreadsheet, but I'm afraid to actually add it all up. But Stuart and Denise, when you include your soft costs and your land and everything else, it's probably more than $200 a square foot.
Yeah, I just did a real quick calculation. So please don't make me swear this on a stack of Bibles, but I'm going to say about 240 a square foot. Yeah,
so about similar to what I'm experiencing, but I'm with Tim on this. I see these mixed-use buildings and you know, multi-res, multi-story buildings coming in at 450. Homestead, which owns tens of thousands of units. They built, I think, 600 units in 3 buildings in Canada. This is about a decade ago, and even back then, it was $350 a square foot all in. And that was a concrete building. Today, it would be at least $450, and it wouldn't surprise me at $550. But even more important than a discussion about costs, okay, Chiranjeev and Bhupinder, even more important than a discussion on costs is a discussion on ROI. Because you don't really care if your costs are $1,000 a square foot, if your cap rate is 6 and 10 and 14%, you know, you don't really care. I mean, maybe in New York City, your cost might be $800 or $1,000 a square foot. If you're building a 40, 50 story building, maybe it's $1,500 a square foot. I don't know. But if you're selling it, if that's what you're doing, selling the office condos, or selling residential condos or retail condos, and you're selling them at $3,500 a square foot or $4,500 a square foot, it doesn't really matter. So it's important to look at both sides of the equation. Bhupinder, you also asked a question about are there zoning considerations when looking for these deals? So when I looked at Belleville, the zoning for most main streets today, whether it's Ottawa or it's Belleville, the downtowns, or for that matter, Long Beach, California, or Phoenix, Arizona, many of these main streets have very flexible zoning. So you're allowed residential, you're allowed retail, you're allowed artisan spaces, you know, you're allowed a lot of this stuff that I'm interested in. The one area where you can run into trouble, and certainly this happened on a Kingston project, is having residential at grade. Because a lot of towns don't really like residential at grade because commercial pays taxes that are 2, 3, or 4 times higher than residential. So they like commercial at grade because they like property taxes higher, right? But what I explained to Belleville when I went and to the Committee of Adjustment is, yes, it's true that there's going to be less commercial space. Same thing in Prescott, by the way, when that laundromat went in and made the commercial space smaller and the residential apartment in back. Same thing there. The argument is we have to go where the market is. Do you really want to have a main street with vacancies? That's the worst condition for a city. Mark and Jordan know, because they live in Belleville, that homelessness is a big issue in downtown Belleville. It's a big issue in downtown Ottawa, big issue in downtown Toronto. It's horrible in San Francisco and Los Angeles, terrible. So you want to have as many eyes on the street. And so if you insist, if a city insists that it can only be commercial, and you can't have a live work condition, and it's going to remain vacant for years. It would be like an attractive woman or a handsome fellow, and he smiles or she smiles and she's missing or he's missing a few teeth. That is not a good look. And we have to try and convince them. So Bhupinder, in terms of zoning, the zoning for everything I wanted to do with that building in Belleville was already there, with the exception of the live work at grade. And I went to the Committee of Adjustment. As I said, it doesn't take very long in most jurisdictions. It's a minor variance, so it's inexpensive. And hopefully you're, as you know, I was lucky, I had good people around me, and I made a presentation myself, and they agreed. So I got what I wanted. So you do have to worry about zoning, but generally on Ontario Main Street, you don't have to worry too much. All right, is there anything else? Let's see what else the chat box is saying. Yeah, so we're hearing from, I think that's from Jake. Thanks, Tim, and also thanks to you, Denise and Stuart. Jake Taylor's on the call with us. He's a very experienced builder. He's, I don't know how many projects, I lost track of how many projects he's building of all sizes and scales. So again, what I would like is everybody's permission to, when I send you out emails with the replay, et cetera, is everybody's email address will be visible as opposed to blind carbon copy. It's so that we can start doing some crosstalk together. If anybody has a problem with that, if any of the ladies or the gentlemen on the call, just email me and I'll make sure that your email address is hidden. But it really will help the class and will help you to talk to each other. So I will be sending open emails unless you send me emails. I don't do that. All right. Ruben asks you, Mark and Jordan, how do you make those bricks look so new?
Well, basically, there's several different steps involved to it. With the paint, we can use a stripper, or quite often we go to a manual brushing with a wire brush. We never sandblast, that deteriorates brick. So it's just a matter of pressure wash and stripper, and then sometimes we have to go to a mechanical process to take the paint off with buffing pads that are used for auto bodies. So there's very little abrasion to the brick, but just enough to get the paint off.
So this building here, Ruben, is one of the ones that Jordan and Mark own with me and Don, and also two Toronto investors. This is across the street from the one that the first one I bought. And Tim Reed, this is when I saw this building, this is the one that I actually wanted to put whoever was the owner of it in jail. I don't really mean in jail, but you know, to take these beautiful, beautiful buildings and make it look like this. So we thought it was going to look like this, Ruben, on the right-hand side when we bought it. My wife was dead set against buying this. She said, this is really ugly. The China Gate was bad, but this is worse, and we shouldn't buy it. But we thought, no, we think from the historic pictures, it'll look pretty cool. This is the town of Belleville back in the day. And look at the downtown core, how thriving it was. And then in the 70s and 80s and 90s, these building owners started to treat their buildings like crap. And the downtown became a ghost town and became unsafe as well. You wouldn't go there at night. And certainly you wouldn't have your wife or your daughter there at night. But it was a beautiful, active, thriving downtown. And you can see this is the what was called the Maze Mall. This is the Encore Mart as it was probably back in the 50s, I guess, or 60s, whatever it was here. Here are some more historical pictures of Belleville. Look at the vehicles, it's probably the 1930s. It was a real thriving, incredible downtown core. And one of the things that, in terms of cracking the code, in terms of making these buildings work, something you have to know when you do this mixed use, Main Street makeovers, what you have to remember is you do not want any tenants that are competing with big box stores. If you have a tenant who wants to put in like a little hardware store and compete with the Home Depot 8 or 9 minutes away from this location, you have to say to him or her no, because they'll just set up and they'll go out of business in no time. So whatever your tenants are, hopefully they want to do a live work thing, and they have to be big box store resistant, internet resistant, and to some extent pandemic resistant. All right. So let's look at some others. So now this is the Maze Mall. Again, as Mark and Jordan and the group were starting to renovate it, and so Ruben, you can see it had this ugly yellow paint on it. They had boarded up these incredible windows. And Mark, is that what it looks like today?
Certainly is. Yeah.
What do you think? Put in the chat box. I'm gonna make you guys do a little bit of work. Give it a score on 1 to 10, where 10 is great and 1 is terrible. What do you think of that? Great job, says Jake. Beautiful. 10 says Mark and Mike and Julie. Thank you. 9.5. Oh, Tim only gave you a 9.5. 10. Okay. Well, you got a lot of 10s, boys. But truthfully, look at the windows too. He put Mark and put in new windows. Now I'll show you what it looks. I'll just go a couple more slides here. This is the inside now. If I showed you, unfortunately, I don't have pictures on the, love the black windows. Thank you, Jake. I don't have pictures of what this looked like before Mark and his group got in there, but look at these windows and look, that is a 27-foot high space that will have these beautiful loft apartments. Dawn and I think that the building across the street is going to be elegant, but this will be off the charts. I don't know what's more than elegant, you guys. I don't really know. This is our Toronto partner, one of our Toronto partners, Viraj Tana, and you get a scale. Look at that. Look at the height of this thing. Can you imagine these loft apartments, what they're going to look like? They're probably all of them going to be on Airbnb. I think, Mark, is that correct?
That's the intention as it stands now. We're going to test Airbnb out with the 3 front units once constructed.
So Tim says, 1 step above elegant is opulent. I like that, Tim. I'm going to suggest it to the boys. This is Dale and Viraj. So this is Viraj. Tana, this is Dale Keeler inside the building looking pretty friggin' happy. So there you go. That was amazing. There was something else I wanted to talk about. How much time do we have left? Can you guys hang on for another 9 minutes? All right, well, I'll let you go by 2, okay? But I really appreciate everybody coming today. I wanted to show you something that is, again, it's a Zoomtown thing. This is a beautiful old monastery built in 1950, so not quite as old as the buildings I've been showing at Belleville. It's in small town Ontario, Alexandria, which is east of Ottawa. I just loved this building. And here's the history, I guess. It's a small town, only 4,000 people, so very small. And the property was purchased in 2010 for $740,000, and then somebody bought it in 2012, or they sold it in 2012 for $930,000. Then it was foreclosed in 2014, and when my client got involved with it, it had been listed for sale for 18 months. The name of the property management company was A1 Property Management. It was not an A1 Property Management Company, and because it was owned now by a lender, that's an absentee landlord. When I went into the building with my client, it was less than 5 minutes after I was in the building before I really started to feel unwell. They had a leak in the roof that had happened over the winter. And you can see black mold is growing here. So I called up the owner, which was the lender, right, who had foreclosed on the property. Said, you know, you've got some mold in the building. You better fix that. And one of the things I wanted to make sure I said today before we get on to other things next week is when you own a building, I don't care if it's a house, it's a nice apartment building like this, a 24-unit apartment building, 100, you should not have any deferred maintenance. It's not just because I think it's a good thing not to have deferred maintenance, because it will crater the value of your building incredibly, all right? So I call up the lender, and the lender said, we're not putting any money in this thing. Well, we're sick of this building. We just want to sell it. I said, but it's been for sale for 18 months, and you've got a problem. Well, our property manager says it's okay. I said, I don't think so. You know, we're coming into the warm weather months. It will spread. You've got to stop the water leak. You've got to get on top of this mold problem. Oh, they didn't pay any attention. So when I went back, it didn't sell over the summer. It went back in the in the fall, it looked like, you know, if you've ever seen the Poltergeist, you know, it looked like the hands of hell were coming up, and it just, it was uninhabitable. And the building it was unbelievable. When they had a vacant apartment, and they had quite a few by the fall because people were getting sick, this is how they left them. So they were trying, A1 management was trying to rent apartments that looked like this. Now, Chris, when you rented your apartment, I don't think it looked like this. No. And so I wanted to get this building cheap for my client because I'm cheap. I called the lender again, I know the guy, and I said, are you aware of what happened to Brittany? What's her last name? Brittany Murphy. She was a young actress, beautiful young woman. She died. And everybody, because she's in Hollywood, thought she died because of alcohol or drugs or something like that. So they buried her. And she was, you know, like 31 or 32. It's terrible. 6 weeks later, her boyfriend died. Now the police are interested. So when they went into her apartment, they found out that black mold had gotten into her apartment and ate her lungs. And then 6 weeks later, ate the lungs of her boyfriend and killed him too. So I told the lender, I said, you know, if somebody were to call the Minister of Environment and they were to test the air, they would order this building vacated immediately. And you, the lender, who are now the owner, are going to be responsible for putting those people up in hotels for however long it takes you to fix this building. So I scared the bejesus out of them, right? So what happened next was my client bought it for $625,000. It's a beautiful 24-unit building. And I put this up here because I can't believe that you would have a $625,000 building or a $625,000 Lamborghini and not take care of it. I mean, if everybody I know who has a Lamborghini, they polish that thing and they baby it. But if you have a $625,000 or what used to be a $990,000 building before the mold ate the building, wouldn't you take care of it? It doesn't make any sense to me that people spend more time taking care of their dog than they do their buildings. Don't let that be you. Now, let me just show you quickly, and then we'll end for the day. Here's the Alexandria thing. I can't go through it all because it's quite lengthy, but bought it for $625,000. It did mold remediation and renovations of $300,000. So total cost was about $935 for my client. Once the units were fixed up, and it wasn't a major fix up, it was, you know, taking out all the crappy carpet and repainting it and putting in laminate floor and whatever was required. It wasn't that bad. And of course, mold remediation was significant. It produced a 20.8% cap rate. That's pretty good. And we valued it at 8.5%. So who am I going to pick on now? I always pick on Chiranjeev. Chiranjeev, you know how to do it now, right? If you've got net operating income of $194,832, and you've got an 8.5% fair market value cap rate, what is the value of the building today? Come on, figure it out for me. We only got a couple more minutes. I got to let you guys go in 3 minutes. So do the numbers. Do you remember how to do it?
The NOI is 194, right?
Yeah, 194,832. And the fair market value cap rate, this is what the appraiser agreed to.
Okay.
Gave him, based on income, a fair market value of I bet you Tim is doing it.
That's 2.3 million around?
Yep. 2.292 million. There you go. Tim got it too. So he got an appraisal 2.5 years after buying it for 2.2 or 2.3 million. That's pretty good. So it went from about 900 and some. These are life-changing things. For this particular client, again, another young fellow, wasn't a particularly wealthy guy. He did have 2 investors. We did the Mad River thing, you know, so he ended up with, I think, 70% ownership in the building. But that can change your life. You know, if you go from, say, a $930,000 value to 2.2 or 2.3 million, you've made $1 million, $1.2 million in 2 or 3 years. That's very hard to do by saving in your job. Even Chris with his great tech job, you can't save, it's hard to save $2 million or $1.5 million in 2 years, right, Chris?
Yeah.
It's not easy. And I wanted to show you something else. And I will send you the spreadsheet so you can study this on your own. The internal rate of return on this. Remember I said the internal rates of return are even higher than the cap rates usually, because it includes appreciation. It includes the mortgage pay down. The internal rate of return for this young fellow is 47% a year. That's why so many wealthy Europeans, Latin Americans, Canadians have their money in real estate. And I want to show you something else that we did. I can't go through all of this. Here's something else. After he owned it for two and a half years, I said, you know, you got a big front yard here. He said, yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I said, yeah. What if we were to sever that off and build triplexes, you know, townhouses that are triplexes? He said, oh, do you think we could do that? And so I said, I think we can. So what he did was he severed off that front piece of property. So went to the Committee of Adjustment. It's called the Land Division Committee, severed it off and built 7 triplexes across the front. So his return on this thing is completely off the charts. You know, when you get to these kinds of numbers, you get 20% cap rates, 40% internal rates of return, and then you get this magical bonus of you know, free land for 7 new townhouses, each of them a triplex. Think about that. It is life-changing, and it's hard to do that in any other business with. I mean, there's risk involved here because he could have gone to the Land Division Committee. They could have turned him down. The zoning might have had to been changed, and there's a risk that maybe that doesn't happen. But if this entire group were to start a tech business for $900,000 or $932,000, and it doesn't work out, and we have to sell it, you know, basically, you know, close it down and get some money for the intellectual property. We'll probably get $10,000 for the intellectual property. But if we did a project like this and we don't get along, or we just get fed up with owning real estate, we want to run off to Costa Rica and smoke cigars and drink rum, we could probably sell it for what we bought it for, or maybe in this case, sell it for much more. So there is risk in real estate, but it's pretty low. All right, are there any other questions before we break for the day? If you have any questions at all, you know, email me. I kept you 2 minutes over time. Mark, thank you so much for showing up today. I'll see you all next Saturday.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiranjeev.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bruce.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good